going on, Degen Nation? Tyler Tamboline here, bringing you another Fantasy Golf Degenerates podcast this week for the John Deere Classic. As usual, when I'm doing the intro, that means there's going to be no Kenny Kim, but I am back in the booth with my guy, Ryan Baroff, the resident fill-in. It's been a minute. Mr. Baroff, what's going on? How you doing this week?
I am good, Tambo. Happy to be here. Got the early DM from Kenny this morning, so happy to fill in.
Yeah, fourth weekend, right? Must have something to do with that, but he's not feeling well. Get well soon, Kenny. We love you. We'll all make fun of you still. It's going to be good. Before we get into it, though, I want to remind you guys very quickly, this show is brought to you and presented by PrizePicks.com. If you haven't yet done so, now is the time. Head over to PrizePicks.com. Use promo code MMN. Get yourself a 100% deposit bonus up to your first $100. Baroff, I said it on Twitter, but can't spell Ricky Fowler without relief. And man, what a sigh of relief that was from him on the green. Crazy. Down the stretch, just awesome. I know we had to watch it like back in the day. I know you could stream it to your TV. I get it. We'll leave that stuff to the side, but it reminded me of the RBC Heritage Classic with the, I think it was Satoshi Kodaira and was it Siwoo in the playoff? And we had to all listen to it on like PGA Tour radio. This was very similar to that almost. Had it on the phone, up on the screen. It stopped working on this feed, brought it back. But in the end, Ricky looking like he was down and out, hopping back in, getting the job done in that playoff with Kawa and with Hadwin. What were your thoughts on the Rocket Mortgage Classic?
Yeah, really cool to see him win. I was glad that I was completely buried and dead, so I could just root for Ricky all day Sunday. I pretty much had all the Hideki, all the Finau, a little bit of JT, so that was that pretty quickly. But yeah, I mean, it looked bad for a while. He stalled out. He wasn't playing badly at all. He just stalled out, couldn't make a birdie, he couldn't make a putt. It seemed like Morikawa pulled ahead, then Hadwin was right there, but just absolute nails on the last hole of regulation and then making that birdie putt. So really cool to see. He's back officially. He'll be part of the Ryder Cup team, obviously. So very good to see.
Yeah, I love that. The call out you had there was kind of what it was. It wasn't, again, people, he choked again. It's like he's 3 under through 9. It was, look, when you're going into round 4 and Sunday at a course like that, you know you're going to have to score still. You can't just coast to the win. I don't think it was like he was trying to coast to it. It's just not everything was working out, but it was kind of funny. In the end, it reminded me almost like the short film version of the Players. The Players is he came way from behind. That was kind of Morikawa at this event. Well, I'm talking about Ricky's win at Sawgrass back in the day, but that last hole, it was like he needed every nail shot. If you remember at the Players, remember on 17, and then in the playoff, he kept planning it on 17, exactly what you had to do. It was just the much fast-forwarded version of that versus the other guys that had climbed up the board, the Glovers, the Kawas. Hadwin did his thing in the group with Pendrith and him. Hey, last time we saw Hadwin on an 18th green, he wasn't collecting 500-600K. He was getting tackled. So not the worst Sunday for him, but obviously right there in the mix again. Was there anybody else like Aberg, I know, got crowned early. Doug Gim won after 5 holes. We all know how these tournaments work, but some of the board, I mean, Aaron Rye has been playing well lately. He seemingly, when he gets through, finds his way up. Taylor Moore back in the mix. Shank, who we're definitely going to be talking about this week. And then, of course, our guy Skyler was on the 600-1 each way with Quest, who did his job. Besides, I think he could have made one more birdie to lock it up a little sooner. This week, it looks like just a made cut. We'll get him the job done for that special temporary status. But any other takeaways or guys up the board for you coming into this week?
No, I think you nailed it. Aaron Rye's a very interesting one because I've been pushing for a while that he should be part of that Ryder Cup team. I don't know if he will be, but I think there's going to be 1 or 2 guys who get on that team who get rewarded for their loyalty on the European tour. Of course, one of those is going to be Adrian Meronk. He's for sure the 9th guy on that team. You could see Victor Perez. You could see Alex Noren, who still plays events over there. Hasn't been great, but he did pop up for a top 10 last week. But right behind Meronk at 9, like I would have Aaron Rye as the next guy on that team.
What about Aberg?
Not yet. I would take the other guy. ADDC's been crushing, but I don't think either one of them will get on. I would have interest in Patrick Harrington, but I think it'll be Meronk. I think it'll be Sepp Straka. I think they'll still take Victor Perez, and then there's going to be somebody who gets hot late who will be a part of that team too.
Yeah, and some of these guys, by the way, we're going to talk about for this week when we get into it, guys. You got Lucas Glover, climbed the board, obviously has a, boom. Look, the course history here, he has it, but it's still boom bust. I was saying that to someone the other day. It's like 4 missed cuts with 5 other good results, including a win. So it's how do you take it away from that and how you use it? And we're going to talk about Jaeger for sure. We're going to talk about Quest again. Glover's up there, Moore, Shank. lower, all these guys, Lauer, lower, the Justin guy. And then, yeah, you mentioned Norm was up there again. Some of these guys, but like you said, we'll have to see. I think Ryan might have to win another Scottish Open here coming up soon if he wants to solidify the spot, but don't hate it. I have a problem. I play him every week. I play Jaeger every week. I play Sungjae this week. Decent week in that sense for me, but I was with you on the Hideki train, a little bit of JT, some Finau, same with you there. My guys at the bottom, the Spawns, the Normans, the Shanks, Jaeger up in the sort of mid-range. Those guys all kind of did their job for me. It was the rest that didn't. Anything else in the world of golf you want to talk about before we move on? Maybe I'm forgetting something. We're not going to talk about the document leaks or anything like that on here, but anything else in the world of golf you had on your mind?
No, I mean, I am actually excited for the Women's US Open this week. They're at Pebble Beach. They haven't been there in forever. So yeah, excited for that one.
We'll save those to the end. I think you got a couple bets there, right? Too. You always put them out. Yep. You'll give your Twitter out again, but we're not going to talk about that either. Rates limited everywhere for everybody. So we got to get those blue check marks flying clear out there. We'll see though what everybody gets to. Let's move on. Let's go to the Lister League for this week. And before I'll give you the lineup here. Just want to let everybody know again, first of all, thank you for filling it last week. We got back into the mix, filled out the 1250. We got 1250 again for this week. So it's already posted out. You can go to my Twitter at Totag and Tambo. It's out there. $500 to first, $50 to 10th. Last place, or sorry, I guess I should say min cash is about around 17% get paid, gets double your money, $10. It's a $5 three max, 10% or less rake, right? Sitting right there around that. So just keep that in mind. Check it out. If we do fill these ones up on the run, so I just mentioned Scottish Open, but we've got this week the John Deere, next week the Scottish Open. If we fill both those at 1250, we're going to 2500 to tie. I reminded Kenny of this last time at the US Open when we got to 2000. Our largest ever was 2500. So we are going to get a chance to get back to that. We just need to fill this week and next. Baroff, I'll read you our winner. It is a two-time winner. So shout out to Big Easy 952. It's not easy to take this thing down, man. 1,250 entries, three max only. It's very challenging and got the job done by 0.5. We haven't had one this close in a while. I'll read you the lineup. Went two guys up top, Morikawa, Fowler, then dropped down to Noren, and then got three of the higher end 6K guys in, Norman, Taryn, and Sam Ryder. What'd you think of the lineup, roster construction, everything to go with it? Give me what you got.
It was unique. Say that. I did not see that roster construction. Obviously hit the nuts at the top with Fowler, Morikawa. I don't know how you got to Alex Noren this week. I guess, well, I think he had course history, actually. I take that back. But he's been terrible. Yeah, very unique, but hey, sometimes that's what it takes. We'll talk about Callum Tarrant a little bit more here today as well.
I like that guy, man. He went on someone like tagged him in the tweet about, can I get the biggest delta? It was either with Rick Rungood or Justin Ray or someone saying, what's the delta between the strokes gained ball striking and the strokes lost putting? And he just forget the whole stat coming out. He just jumps in and says, well, I tell you this, can't get any worse. So we'll find out what he can do this week. I know we'll talk a little bit about him probably in the betting segment, definitely when we get to DFS, but betting, I know a lot of people have similar cards this week. I think you and I have some similarities as well, but just want to say one thing and ask you about this because don't always get a chance to chop it up with you. I love when I do, but we talked about this last week. I talked about it on multiple shows across the space. So like you said, it's unique for sure, but Norman, Taryn, Ryder, three guys in the 6K range. I do say this all the time. Yes, factually, they're in the 6K range, but obviously if any of those guys had a 7 in front of their name, it wouldn't shock you if they were all 7,000 or 7,100. It's the same thing. Just can't put everyone at the same tag. But this type of lineup, to me, two things. One, it got there. It's not calling it out for getting there. Like when a Millie Maker lineup wins and people make fun of it, even though they won $1 million, we're still looking at process and trying to figure it out. I said it's really hard to pinpoint these 6K guys. Hard to win at DFS anyway, but I'm just saying that makes it, to me, a little bit more difficult when you're trying to pinpoint 2 to 3 of them at least. And I'll give you an example. The guy in second, Doc_Holiday, Fowler at 10-4, Kirk and Hadwin in the 8K range, Aaron Rye, Bez, and Gim. So it's 1 10K, 2 8Ks, 3 7s, 4 guys under 10% in that lineup. And then, or sorry, 3 guys and 1 guy at 12. So it's pretty close to 3 guys under 10, pretty close to 4. Point being, that to me still feels like we have more top 20 odds. We have more win equity potentially in that type of field, all that stuff. Again, anybody can get there, but just your thoughts on that roster construction, trying to pinpoint when there's 98 guys in the 6K range.
Yeah, well, I think in that specific example, what do Norman and Ryder do that Bez and Rye don't? And that's that they make birdies. They make a lot of birdies. They hit the ball far. And I think that's something to sort of look at, when you speak about the top guys, like obviously Fowler, Morikawa, awesome players, wouldn't call them bombers, wouldn't call them birdie makers, but it doesn't really matter who you take at the top. We just got fucked by playing Hideki and Justin Thomas.
Yes.
But I think when you get down into the low 7-6Ks, like that's what you want. Like all these guys are pretty much the same in terms of, win equity, cut equity, whatever it is. You want the guys who are going to score. Those streaks, those birdies, they mean a lot more when you're kind of looking at the 6K range. So in that sense, I think I could get behind some of those guys. I would never build a team with all three of them.
Yeah, and I think one thing you said there that stood out again, like kind of wrapped your statement around it, was that at least it's targeted, right? Mind you, swung in there with a guy like Alex Noren for safety, maybe that might make sense. But like you said, at least when he went down low, Norman, Taryn, Ryder, we know what those guys can do. You do know there's a lot of volatility, but that's okay. And again, part of a 3 max setup here for Big Easy. I'm assuming played the 3 as a regular in this tournament. So yeah, I see at least 2. Oh, it's got the 3 in brackets. So it just means the other one didn't do well enough to show, but the other one came 32nd, and it was with Norman, Ryder, and Champ. He swapped Noren and he swapped, who's the other guy in the first one? Taryn.
Norman.
He swapped Noren and Taryn for Cam Champ and Davis Riley.
So kind of same thing, right? Bombers who just make birdies. Yeah. And I think we can talk about that with this field too.
Yeah, we'll talk about it when we get here, but I think to your point, that one might have been actually the better build for that field, because at least Riley, Champ, Norman, Ryder, all same idea versus Noren's kind of the safety play there. But again, with Morikawa and Fowler up top is obviously who he felt comfortable with. All right, we can move on. Let's talk about this week. Let's go into the JDC. I think one thing right off the top, Baroff, and I'll let you talk stats, strategy, things you have for the week, but I just think in general, the same betting card is on, at least three or four of the same guys on almost every betting card. It seems, for the people that we run with and pay attention to. Again, a lot of groupthink in that perspective, but even the outside ones that you're seeing come in, there's a lot of the same guys, I think, that people are on early. And that to me is, just some good betting numbers or some numbers on guys we like and numbers we're seeing. I don't know about the other side of it with the Shanks at 30 and Denny's. I don't even know what Denny is right now, 16 or 14 in some places or something, but we'll get there. But what stands out to this event? What are you looking for? What type of stats, strategy do you have going into something like this? And on a week where it looks like people, if they're doing that in betting, will have to think it translates at least a little bit over to DFS, which we'll get into shortly.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it's a shitty field. There's going to be some bad numbers. It doesn't mean that you should bet bad numbers, right? Like Adam Schenk, not a good number. Steven Yeager, not a good number, right? Alex Smalley, not a good number. But yes, they're fine plays. You obviously have to make a lot of birdies this week. It's not the type of place where you're just going to find birdies. So I'm definitely rolling with the guys who are in form, which is basically why everybody has the same card. You look at a guy like Ches, who almost won. He is hitting his irons far and away better than anybody else in this field. Like, I think that makes a heck of a lot of sense. So, people are just going to keep playing their guys, and that comes with a big price increase this week.
Yeah, it really does. And we'll get to some of those guys up top, but I think you made some good points there. Obviously, going back to that listener league, you can talk about it from that angle where we just mentioned it, where you want to target that way and just build it out. I think a lot of people will do that, but I think at the same time, it's just, being cognizant of your overall roster construction. Mayo and I recorded the show a little bit early this week that we usually do on Wednesday because he's off on vacation. And just looking at it from that perspective, we were seeing right away a lot of Henley, Shank, who are the 7K guys, Taryn, et cetera, et cetera. We'll get there when we go through it, but just to note, you don't have to go completely off the board on every guy. There's certainly guys in this field that you could feel good about and just jam them in. If you want to take our guy Big Easy 952, who again, we will see in the 4-man this week. Kenny will still be in it. We'll get Baroff in, Big Easy. And then he's also in the Tournament of Champions, of course. But if you want to build that approach, you can definitely get away with it. Again, this week, it's just, do you pinpoint the right guys, and are the guys up top the ones that get through? Because that is the other thing too, Baroff, and I talked about this last week, it was almost like it was reminiscent of the Bryson year last year, where when Bryson and I think it was Bryson and Wolf, maybe one more, were the only like 2 of 13 guys or 3 of 13 guys at the top that actually even got through and made the cut. Last week, a little more made the cut, but of guys that mattered up top: Fowler, Morikawa. Who else? Anybody? I actually don't even think. Keegan, 9,200, got a T21. Like there was not many guys from up in that range that ended up being needed, required, near the top, anything. And that's because of these birdie fests. And we know that going in. So just keep that in mind when you're building out. So anything extra you want to add there before we get into these tiers?
No, and I think obviously this is it's an iron course. It's a wedge fest. You do need some long irons as well, but essentially, you're looking at that 100, 150 yard range. It's why Steve Stricker has done well here. It's why Zach Johnson's done well here, right? That's kind of what you're going for.
Yeah, I agree. So let's hop in. We'll get into the top here. The big conversation is going to be right out of the gates. Denny McCarthy, the max price. He's the max price for this tournament. They've got 10-6. I don't know if we've ever seen Denny this high. We've definitely seen him in the 9s for sure, but argument to be had here, a couple different ways. One is obviously guys having a season like no other. I think not as many people understand how good this season actually is. I'm sure you've got some takes. I've got some takes. I even got some reverse course from this morning after just trying to look into stuff a little bit more and having even more time to dig in already. That's kind of the fun of doing this. You can actually dig in a little bit deeper, but we got Henley up there who looks like from the stats, the best play based on just everything, like you said, we'd be looking at and coming in and form and all that. Aberg, not sure many will go there and paying up for him after sort of how he trickled out over the weekend last week, but you could argue that maybe this is a better, not course wise, I don't think it is anyway, but you could argue it's a better spot to hop in when less people are on him and sort of maybe down a little bit on him at that price. And then Cam Young, do you think he was even playing this event before the season's gone the way that it has, or what do you think about this setup? So Cam Young up to McCarthy, talk me through this range.
Yeah, it's an interesting range. I think I have a feeling Aberg is going to be exceptionally low on this week. I don't know if that's right or wrong. I'm going to say it's probably right. I think he's certainly overpriced from what he is. So I think everyone's going to have the same build here. They're going to choose one of Denny and Henley. Then they're going to grab, Eric Cole or Adam Schenk. That's just kind of where it goes. So if you're having trouble choosing between Denny and Henley, my recommendation would be why not both? I think it would make you a little more unique. You still don't even need to dive into the 6s, like maybe grab one guy there, but there's plenty of value in the 7s, which we'll talk about. So I see the argument for both. Again, I'm just going to go with Denny because I like the form a little bit better when it comes to a birdie fest. I want the better putter. And I was looking back at kind of his run last summer, right around this time, which was 5th at Memorial, 7th at the US Open, and then finished 6th at the Deere, nearly identical to what he's doing right now, right? He had the 2nd at the Memorial, 20th at the US Open, T7 at the Travelers. And even statistically, like his putter was on fire. He was doing everything well. It's exactly the same now, but he's just like a tier higher. So I think he should be the clear favorite in this field, and I'm leaning heavily on him over Russell Henley this week.
Okay. Any thoughts on Cam Young at the bottom there, and then I'll give my thoughts.
No, I thought about it because there are some things that I think make sense for Cam Young here. I can't overlook the form. I can't overlook the fact that he does not hit enough fairways right now. Not a good iron player. Not putting I just don't see it. And he's still going to be like 10 to 12% owned, and not like you're getting him at like 4%. So.
Yeah. And one of the things was like, just looking back again, it's, the thought process was a little bit on him, and then I'll go from the bottom up here, I guess, but that if you could get him on an easier course, the US Open, the Memorial, the PGA Championship, the Wells Fargo, Heritage, Masters, all these ones that he's played, could you get that effect of what JT had back at the Travelers? But then the argument would be, well, he didn't have it at the Travelers himself. He came 60th, could not find a putter, anything like that you could find. So definitely don't hate your thought there. I mean, he's interesting at 10K because I think, again, but I guess what's your thoughts between him and Aberg? If you had to pick one, who would you take?
I would take Cam for sure. And the data golf rankings, they're not the be all end all. I think they aggregate a lot of really good stuff there. And I mean, if you're just looking at that, like they have Henley 14, they have McCarthy 15, and they have Cam Young at 40. And obviously it's a good buy low spot, and he's going to be half to a third of the ownership, but I just don't see anything from him right now.
Yeah. And so here's my reverse course from this morning. So when Mayo and I had talked and looked at this, and we went into the Denny McCarthy thoughts, look, Henley lines up perfectly. Like, again, you go look at any of the stats or anything, like you're coming in, even on easier courses, all that stuff. You just talked about the rankings, all these things. He's still going to show up. So he's going to get owned this week. He's going to get played. That's fine, for good reason. I mean, look at his history here is solid. Going back 11th, 2nd, 27th. You look at the run that he's coming in on, all top 20s now the strength of field. And this is one thing I've talked about forever. And I think that's where the reverse course comes from, because I wasn't really as high on McCarthy. And looking back at the rounds he's played on easier courses, weren't very good. But then when you dig in, and that's the fun in Fantasy National, being able to go back and actually see where are these rounds from. Well, not many from this year, because all the guy's been doing is playing designated events, designated events, elevated fields, whatever you want to call them, and going through those and majors and doing very well. And then the idea I thought of, I know you were talking on Twitter with somebody today saying it's just a name, and it's so true. Remove the name. If some of these other guys were in this field and this price, wouldn't you be good with them? You would be, because some of those names were pretty strong compared to what we're about to get into in this 9K range, let alone Henley, Aberg, and Young, who we just talked about. And then the second point would be, forget which event this was most recently. You may remember, have a better memory than me. Tyrrell Hatton was on a run of playing such strong events and absolutely crushing it, even at the best of best events. And then what was the Canadian Open? I think it was Canadian Open. And he gets in a much weaker field than what he'd been playing in. And he had that putt on 18. He was right in the mix. It was an incredible round down the stretch, but it wasn't just that round. It was all week. It was getting into that. So you had to just take all those strong field events and say he was doing it at way tougher courses against way better talent. And now he gets in, come in. And there is some course to this one where you could say, okay, but the field gets mitigated a little bit like last week, where you see where some of these guys, and that was Mayo's point, is down the board. We have a lot of other quote unquote Denny McCarthy's that can do what he does skill set wise. But to your point, and if the rankings and just from generalities around playing in those stronger fields, tougher courses, just take him for what he's worth and maybe don't overthink it. So kind of how I'm putting it together just as the day goes on and digging a little bit deeper. McCarthy, Henley, Young for tournaments. Aberg, even at the lower ownership, it's just tough. Like you said, I thought the stuff Mayo was saying on him today too, just about the course setup, maybe not the same or better. Like, again, it takes more away from a guy like him, who's super powerful in the sense of the 360, 380 range straight off the tee versus, not that that's not helpful everywhere, but at this course, like you said, it's going to come down to these wedges. The guys like Ches Reavie and stuff that are going to be in the mix can take away from that. And they even did just this past weekend. We saw it when it played out over 4 days. Anything else off of that, or that you want to mention up in the top range before we go on?
Nope. Let's do it.
All right, let's move on. Let's go Hadwin down to JT Poston. So JT Poston, I believe, won here last year, right? Yes. And Grillo, well, he came in second and recently won himself. So go ahead.
Yeah, this is it's a very interesting range. Obviously, a lot of ownership is going to go to Adam Schenk, probably rightfully so. A lot of ownership is going to go to Eric Cole, also probably rightly so. So I think, if you wanted to get unique here, there are a couple of guys who I think, if you look at long-term form, probably better than the rest. And that's Keith Mitchell and Chris Kirk. Kirk seems to be slowly coming out of the slump a little bit. The irons have been really good the last 2 weeks. Don't know what's going on with Keith Mitchell. He forgot how to hit irons, but he drives it so well, and he can get hot with the putter that, like, if he finds it, you could see Keith Mitchell winning. Like, he's got that kind of upside. And he's probably going to be 5% owned this week versus Cole and Schenk, who are going to be 20. And so for GPPs, I would go with those two this week.
Yeah, once the squeeze conversation comes out, because obviously he's literally right between Cole and Schenk, I do think he'll get a little bit of steam, but it won't be enough to matter. And to your point, you just got to play the guys you want to play in this range. So I think he's still interesting. I did see a little crossover, and I know this is the hardest part because, you see Hadwin losing the playoff last week and then come through at almost 10K, 9,800. But again, I think you could make that same argument for him being above. And then what about these guys at the bottom? It seems like no one's going to Grillo. I thought Grillo would still get some love just because his recent form and how he did here last year, but obviously Power, Poston surprisingly off the win may get nothing. But what about those guys at the bottom? And then did you think about anything on Taylor Moore off of last week?
Yeah, I'm not a big Taylor Moore guy, so I'm going to wait because he really hasn't been good. Like, he was, of course, pretty good last week, but it's been a while since he played well. I am in on Grillo for sure. He's just playing awesome. I don't really think you have to overthink it. Nobody's going to play Power and Poston because they're going to go to Smalley and Jaeger, which we'll get to next. So yeah, they're definitely going to be very low owned. But for me, it's Cole. It's Cole and Grillo mostly. But if I want to get unique, it's going to be Mitchell and Kirk.
Yeah, and last one, because we're going to talk about the same guys. So instead of me just saying the same stuff you're saying on these ones, I guess and the tournament pivots and everything that goes with that. I guess another question I would have, one that we talked about this morning, Mayo and I, about roster construction. If people don't go Henley and McCarthy, because first of all, like even one of them, I know what you were saying earlier, take both. Funny enough, they're the same price as Fowler and Morikawa last week, 10-6, 10-4. So you could literally build the big easy 9-5-2 lineup if you find the birdie makers down low. Not the worst idea, I guess. It worked last week, but just in general, if you didn't pick one of them, which is definitely going to be more prevalent, someone's going to take one of those guys, one of Cole, Shank. What do you do if you just start in the 9K range? What are your thoughts here as a way to, like, do you go Cole or Shank with two of Kirk, Grillo, Power, or how do you look at that range? Or sorry, Mitchell, Kirk, and Grillo?
If I was building three from that range, I would take my two favorites, which are Cole and Grillo. I would not put Shank on that team. So I would say either Kirk or Mitchell for that third spot. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that if you're going with three. And then if you have two, you could get away with it as well. And I do think you did make a case. I think then you would want to put, look, you can put it, it's anything can happen. It's DFS golf. But if you put Cole and Shank, if people do just pick two again, I think that's the combo they go with. So maybe it is your Mitchell and Grillo or your Cole and Kirk or something like that. I wouldn't hate that. And then you'd still be able to pick up one of these next guys.
You just have to not put them with Ches and Dylan Wu.
Correct. Yeah, when we get down there, even others, I think there's more than just that, but definitely those guys for sure. Let's move on. Let's go to this 8K range. You talked about it. The most popular guys are right at the top. Smalley, Jaeger. Don't think people go back to Benny Ann. He was popular last week, though. Straka let people down over the weekend. Bez, you could talk about if you like. Like, who do you like in this range? I will note quickly before you go, as of now, at least, I don't think it's coming. Patrick Rogers did not WD. He says out, or at least he did an hour ago or 2 hours ago when I was looking on the DK app. That was from a previous WD. So he's not currently WD'd from this event. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't love the range. I think the best player here is Steven Jaeger. I'm not going to say play because he could be 24% owned and not good play at all, but he rates out the best for me in this range. I do like Alex Smalley a bit. I was also super high and bet Straka last week, so I'm not just going to give up quite yet. I mean, beyond that, not a lot of interest. I would jump down to Gim at flat 8K. I think he makes a lot of sense. He's played well in this part of the country. The irons are really good. He's making a lot of birdies. So I would skip over that Bez, Monty, P. Raj, Taylor, Kuchar group.
Yeah, P. Raj was interesting again because he has that next to his name. We'll see how that shakes out as the week goes on. But I'm with you up there. The one thing, I was having this conversation in our Discord today over at Ship It Nation. Somebody asked about Jaeger, and I liked him right out of the gate because I think it was just like 2 weeks ago we were betting him at I wasn't. Well, others were betting 50-1, and I didn't like it that week because the event of how it was set up. Like again, it was a much stronger field, I think, at least than this. He's at 40. I know it's not the best number, like you said earlier on, when you've got Shank at 33, all that. But I did have one thought on him is the John Rathouse, the guy that talked about it on Twitter last week about how Ricky has, with his new caddy, it's actually Lashley's old caddy when he won the Rocket Mortgage. I like this little tidbit that he'd brought out. And then he said for this one, he was on with Jaeger last year, and Jaeger just couldn't make any putts. And that's when he started working on his timing drills. He definitely started making putts this week, especially on Sunday. He made a lot. He was 9 under, bogey free, with a streak that also had an eagle in it and everything into the mix. But 40-1, taking it there. And then if he gets to 20-25% range on DK, do you have any thoughts around that? Like sometimes betting a guy and then not playing him in DFS just because you like the number, then you see that he gets way too popular for a range you're not really in love with, or your roster construction may not fit it as well.
For someone like him specifically, I would rather play him, I think, because he's got the birdie making upside. He shot 9 under on Sunday again.
Yep.
I would probably rather do that because he really hasn't shown the win equity. I think he has like one top 5 ever on the PGA Tour. So I like the birdie making upside. It's kind of interesting because he's certainly gotten better this year, just kind of across the board, all categories. He's done the speed training, and I mean, you can see he is bombing the ball right now, which is awesome. He's putting better of late, but like what you said, in both of his appearances here, he's been just piss poor on the green. So that certainly worries me, but I would take some chances for the scoring.
Yeah, what was it? The Emerald Coast was the W over Lipsky in a playoff, it looks like. So back in the day, that was 2021. But the point is, like you said, that actually makes sense. So there's some had asked me about it. That's a good way to look at it as well, where I said sometimes it's the reverse. That's a prime example. He's 8,800. He's not 10K. He's not Adam Hadwin 9,800 or 10-6 Denny McCarthy, where he's just a little bit over the average price. It may make more sense, even with the ownership that's going to be there, to eat that. Don't eat it with everything else like we talked about. But if you want to eat him as your ownership and use up that for your birdie making and stuff like that, I wouldn't hate it, because his 30th place could still score really well. You do still need him to make the cut, obviously. But the point being, that's a way to get a little bit different with it. So I don't hate that. I'm with you. I like Smalley a little bit. I don't mind the Rogers call. Like you mentioned, you're not as high on him in this range, but just from the perspective of some of the stats and the easier course, easier field, all that stuff, I could get to him. And then Doug Gim, birdie maker at the bottom. So that's it for the 8K range. So we can move on. This is where it gets a little bit interesting, because the upper 7K range is pretty small this week. It's actually only 11 guys in the $7,500 to $7,900 range. So let's do that one quickly. First thoughts there, and then we'll drop down, because again, the lower sevens loaded again.
Yeah, I mean, my two favorites, I will say, it's probably coming no surprise, Ches Reavie, number one, and then Mark Hubbard. I'm perfectly fine overlooking what he did kind of the last couple of weeks. He's been on a really good run overall. One missed cut up in Detroit where he just lost the ball striking is no problem. Even the missed cut at Travelers, he gained like 3 strokes approach and like a stroke putting. Not too worried about that. So I like the flop leg there, but I'm all in Ches this week, as many people are.
Yeah, Ches is solid. What do you think is going to be owned in DFS?
So, people don't like to play Ches. I would say in the big one, he will be 15%.
Fair range anyway. Like, again, I think that's like, again, where he sits. He doesn't look, at least to me right now, based on what I'm seeing around him, as the guy that gets to like 25 or 22 to 25% range or something. Like, I definitely would not see that at all. So that would shock me. So just to say where you're at, I think that's pretty good number. I talked about this today. I definitely think this is an interesting one. The Hubbard conversation. Like last week, everyone's like, oh, we're getting back on him. Nobody is. People still got on him. Like, to me, that's not, I always say this, it's probably, my own opinion on it, but it's not like the definition of flop leg to me. I think flop leg is like maybe this week, if nobody's back on him and then he comes through, even though it's like flop leg. Whenever, like in NFL, DFS, everyone always like gets off a wide receiver, gets played at 30%. He does not catch the touchdowns. Next week, and everyone's like, oh, everyone's going to be off him. But no, everybody's right back on him, and you all have the same guy. And I remember a couple of years ago with Will Fuller, it took to like week 5, and then he goes for 58 points, but everyone still had him. It's like there never was a flop leg because everyone kept playing him. So yes, it kept happening eventually, but the ownership and that matters. So I think that's one point on him. What about these two? I was going to ask. Well, I guess there's two I really wanted to ask you about. One I think could be popular. Ryan Palmer seems like he'll be pretty popular. He pops in the stat sheets. He pops on the projection sites, the numbers. Last week were pretty solid. There was people playing him in Showdown quite a bit. So Ryan Palmer was one. And then Sargent at 7,500. Just your thoughts on him, because people were playing him last week as well, but similar setup, I think, right? As what we were talking about earlier with Aberg, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I would play Sargent before Aberg. Just he's $3,000 cheaper, and you're getting, pretty comparable player. Yeah, I mean, Palmer's ball striking has been great of late. He still can't putt at all. And I don't know, he just doesn't show the upside. Like, even the last couple of weeks, he played pretty well. He's like, barely in the top 40. He doesn't have a single top 10 here, I don't believe, in his career. I just don't think you're getting the upside with Ryan Palmer.
It's actually been really bad here. 2 missed cuts, 77 and 18th. That's back to 2012. So not much going on for him there. You talked about him coming in. Like, again, it was more of just stats last weekend. But again, looking at the stats models like Fantasy National, looking at some of the projection sites and stuff early, definitely looks like someone that could get some steam here. So maybe that takes away from Ches. But I think it gets pretty spaced out in here anyway, because not many people are playing guys in the 8K range. And this is kind of right where you fall when you do your Henley Schenk lineups.
Yeah,
you definitely have room to afford somebody up here, even two. Like, you can go Palmer, Hubbard, or Reavie, and one of Palmer or Hubbard and get away with it, no problem. And then one other guy I was going to ask you on up here, and then we'll move down. just early thoughts on these guys. Bo Hostler at 7,600. Anything you want to do with him? Not play him?
I don't play him very often. I mean, he fits the mold. He hits it far enough. He's a pretty good wedge player, not a good iron player overall, but pretty good wedge player, pretty good putter. I haven't seen anything from him this year at all. I would rather play Dylan Wu. I obviously think he's going to be pretty popular. But yeah, no Hostler for me.
Okay. Wu's another one that's definitely makes sense in here. You talked about him earlier. Again,
Yeah.
Don't know how popular everybody can get in this range when there's so many options, and we're about to get there now. Actually, we'll go there right away, but just, Peter Quest, 7,400. Not sure how many go back to the well on him, but just going down, it looks like to me right now, there is about 30 guys exact as of right now. See where the Monday queues come in, but I'd imagine they'll be in the 6K range from the names I saw, low 6Ks that is. So just going here, Quest down to the 7K range where there's, 6, 7 guys, maybe 8 guys there. What are some of the guys in the lower 7s that stand out for you?
I mean, I have no issue playing Quest because he's done it in more than one event. Obviously, last week was his best, but he's had a couple other starts where he played well. He's obviously Monday queued multiple times. Like, you've got to be in form and able to go really low, which you certainly need here. He's exceptionally motivated to make this cut so he can get his special temporary membership. I think he pretty much just needs to make the cut. But no, for me, I mean, number one for me here is going to be Callum Tarrant. I think, again, pretty popular, played really well here last year. Ball striking has been really good the last couple of weeks, and he seems to be trending up. He had a 43rd, a 33rd, 29th. Like, he's for sure a very good top 20, top 15 candidate this week. There's been a little buzz about Lucas Glover. I could definitely see that. Especially like it as a pivot off of Carson Young. Carson Young's, again, one of those guys who's just been perennially over-owned because he's a cut maker, right? He's just consistently making cuts, but there's just no upside there. Like, I would much rather take the boomer bust upside with Lucas Glover than playing Carson Young again. And then the third guy that I'll mention here, he has shown a little bit of something. Zach Johnson. When we started this gig, he would have been $11,000 at this golf course.
Yes.
He's obviously not that player anymore, but he's been making cuts. There's been multiple weeks where he shot 4 rounds in the 60s. I would take him for a top 25 right now. And at 7,100, he has more upside than that. So again, he might be 8%, 7% owned, but I would definitely have Zach Johnson in the pool this week.
And this is the problem with this range. I mean, it's not even you can't hate on the call because of his course history here in the past, even the years, previous to last year, even when it wasn't the first, second, third, fifths that we were used to, you still saw 16, 34, 37. Like, he was still popping up and doing plenty for a $7,100 price tag. You talked about it as of late. I think it was 2 weeks ago.
At Travelers, he played well. Yeah.
Travelers, 29th. That's what it was. And then there was one round this past weekend, I believe he played really well in too, that sparked some showdown interest. So again, he's there with what he has, and now maybe back on a course that he's comfortable on, not just the course history bit, as much as he's finding a little something, and does that translate and get brought over at 7,100? I don't know, but I will say this. I don't think many people get there because getting some Hadley buzz, getting some Neesmith love, Akshay can make.
You talk about guys with no upside. We're just naming them all. Yeah.
You don't think Neesmith can come through? That's my boy. Neesmith at 7,100.
I think just always lets me down. Like, yeah, I mean, Chesson Hadley, he's going to shoot one low round and he's going to finish T31. Matt Neesmith, maybe T56, but probably miscut. He can't putt. He just can't putt.
He has not been able to putt very well at all. When he did come through, I mean, 23rd at the PGA Championship, 30th at the Byron Nelson, 35th at the Wells Fargo, 39th API. Like, he's in the mix, but yeah, if he found a putter, it would be a lot better. That week at the Wells Fargo, man, that looked like the stretch for him to get something done. Wells Fargo, Byron Nelson, PGA Championship. He lost almost like 3-4 strokes at the Wells Fargo with the putter, so that hurt him.
Yeah, like, I would rather, again, like, you're talking about just upside, birdie makers, kind of things like that. Like, I would rather play a guy like Garrick Higo. Like, he's off the map, but that when he pops, he can literally win these events, right? So, like, I don't have interest in Lipsky and Hadley and Neesmith and Streelman and even Akshay. Like, he hasn't been good. So, Yeah, give me Zach Johnson. Why not?
All right, I'll give you that. The Higo one is definitely interesting because that usually a guy I limit to somewhere in showdowns and stuff because you're normally not going to get the 4
He
rounds.
bombs it and he can putt, right? Like what else?
Yeah.
Like what else do you want? Yeah.
And if you get the 2 rounds enough to make the weekend, that's fine. Give me 1 strong round over the weekend at that price, and you're still in great shape. Akshay has been bad, but I will note to your point, if you want to get real up, I mean the real upside, 4th at the Mexico Open, 2nd Puerto Rico, 17th at the Bermuda. Like at least in these birdie fests, maybe that's what he needs to get back into the mix of things. It did not work last week, but he could not find a putter. He did not have it around the green. So again, that's the volatility you're getting with these guys, but that's kind of the boom bust. What about my guy Nick Hardy? I'm not sure if you saw that today on Twitter. He did the cameo for one of the Sia does the strokes gain narrative lineups, and somebody paid for a cameo. Which, by the way, your Cam Tringali, I got to interject here. We'll go back to Nick Hardy in a second. The story is Nick Hardy read the lineup for strokes gain narrative and included him. He's from Illinois. He's got 3 made cuts here in his 3 tries out, says how much he loves the course. There's the Nick Hardy story. I have to go back to this really quick, and I'm putting this guy on blast right now. I don't care. For your birthday, I bought you a Cam Tringali cameo because you would not put him in your bio as a stan. You have Kokrak and Fitz, right? And those guys came through for you. Then Fitz famously, walked off the course and went to live. But I tried to get him to say, like, oh, thanks for being a big fan. You're my guy. Why can't you have me in your bio? I want to be a Tringali stan in your bio. I was trying to get him to do all that. He ghosted me on Cameo. They refunded me the money. I thought maybe this guy doesn't like the script that I gave him. So I was like, well, that sucks. Can't get this for Baroff anymore. You saw it going around on Twitter. Yeah. Long story short, randomly out of the blue, like a month ago, he comes back to me and replies and says, so sorry I missed this. I'll do it for free. I'm like, damn, it's just for the bit now. I don't care. So I'm like, that's sweet. Like I would have paid again, even I don't care. But this is worse than maybe the Twitter blue checkmark thing. In order to respond on Cameo, you have to send a private message for him is $4. But I was like, now this is much better than the money I paid for the Cameo. So I paid the $4. I said, absolutely, he'll love this. He was so heartbroken that he didn't get his birthday gift. I got him something else instead. I tried to play it out. He did not do it for me again. So forget this guy. He did not give me this. He got my $4. That did not get refunded. I'm pissed.
Told you. Yeah, glad he's out of our lives here. I do like Nick Hardy this week. Again, I struggle with the upside of winning a GPP, but I would 100% play him in cash games this week.
Yeah, and Taryn's right there. You mentioned Glover getting some of the love from the past course history. I guess, like you said, Wu obviously is up there. So 2 more quick, and then we'll do a quick run of the 6Ks. Sam Stevens, go ahead.
I was going to say Sam Ryder, but I don't mind Sam Stevens. He seems to have cooled off a little bit. I think he was sort of overperforming what we saw because he wasn't great on the Corn Ferry Tour last year. He was kind of, a middle of the pack, kind of a top 10 guy there, but not really. Again, I would play Sam Ryder again for sure.
Okay, I was going to check. I thought we might have saw another WD with some of the responses on Twitter, but it's not the case. We'll see what that's about after. And then who was the one last guy? Maybe while I was doing that, I missed. Did you mention Will Gordon quickly?
I did not.
Will Gordon, birdie maker.
Yeah, I just don't play him a lot. I don't know why. I think he just has a propensity to blow up a little bit.
Even this past
earlier in the year, the irons were good. Now they suck. So I don't know.
Yeah, even this past weekend, he scored, but then ended up like T76 or T74 or whatever. Like he just did not come through in the clutch. Mind you, he was on the winning 555 signature hole lineup. Shout out to my guy. I think it's QSMAT 23, but my guy Matt, he got the job done for 100K with no Ricky and with Will Gordon. So congrats to him for winning the 100K. I don't have much else in this range interest there. We talked through it, I think, well enough. Let's go to the 6K range, though. And you could include, you mentioned Sam Ryder at 7K. I'm not sure if there's anybody else there you were interested in. Justin Lower scored pretty well over the weekend. Again, it was hard to peg him in the 6K range as the guy. Chad Ramey was another guy that we've seen pop up in Birdie Fest that scored pretty well over the weekend. So low 7s with those guys, and then starters with Sig and down the rest of the 6K range.
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly not going to be rushing to play these guys, but the 2 at 69 that I would definitely play would be Grayson Sig and Davis Thompson. Sig especially has kind of come back of late. He died for a while. Ball striking's been good. He makes a lot of sense at sort of these sort of shorter courses. And then Davis Thompson, obviously, he hits the ball a mile. Ball striking's been pretty good. He has a lot more upside than anybody else down here for the most part. If you're desperate, I mean, of course, Carl Yuan played really well last week. I don't really expect him to play that well again, so I don't have a lot of interest. Another guy, Troy Merritt, played well last week. I don't really have a lot of interest, but one guy who is going to be low owned is William Mao. Wow, I don't even know how to say his name. The kid from Pepperdine, who completely crushed our souls at NCAAs because he played so terribly. But he's been playing on Corn Ferry Tour, been kind of consistently top 25 the last couple of weeks, making a lot of birdies. And obviously, you know, we've seen what these other kids do. So you won't be able to play them for 6,600 in these fields very often. So I would take some shots there.
Yeah, there's a cat reference in there too, meow. But the 40-1, yeah, RIP that ticket. That was felt like it had some life for a little bit there, and then it did not. So
yeah,
either way,
horrible. It was horrible.
It was a bad ending, but that's still good. I like that play. I like the idea of going down there. I'm with you on Sig. I think I should have bet Thompson, actually, is what I think I should have done. So
I almost did it.
I feel like he's somebody that's playing really well. So I kind of like Sig Thompson in that range. What's the wording you just used? I was going to make fun of it because you said something that I'll have to tell Mayo. You're like, if you're desperate, play Carl Yuan.
Yeah.
And he's definitely back in on him. So have fun being desperate to our guy Mayo. But no, he's very happy with the result he got for him last week, rightfully so. So he's happy to go back to the well on Crazy Carl, as he likes to call him. I like the Billy Madison gifs and gifts that you get out of it, however you want to say it. So other than that, though, Satoshi was a little bit back. Not going, I don't think I can get there, but he was back in round 2 and round 3. He looked pretty solid there.
Yep.
Merritt, did he find something? All I will say is he was dialed in round 1 through 4.
Yep.
And I said this to Mayo earlier. I'm reusing the bit and the joke because I don't know if anyone out there has a Troy Merritt flowchart, but I do. And it's been the same forever. Is this course easy? Yes. If so, is Troy Merritt cheap? Yes. Play Troy Merritt.
Yep.
I just don't think he's going to be that popular enough to care. Like, yeah, he could get the 4 or 5% here, but you're either in on him or you're out. There's so many guys you could play. So I get it from that angle. But like I say, if you're going to play these guys in the 6K range, I prefer to take a stand. He would be a guy that I'd be okay fitting into the pool and just getting that 7 to 10%, where at least if I'm right on him, I've got some chances with him and not just grabbing 1 or 2% of every guy down here just to say I built a lineup with them. That's not how I do it. So last week it was Norman and Norlander. Norlander made the cut, but then did not come through at all. Norman was okay. And then, 80 something points, not the worst.
Yep.
Last guy for me, just to ask you, the Tyler Duncan, round 1, round 2, round 3, improved with the irons every single round last week, lost it in round 4, but 6,400. Not sure if you had any interest in anyone really low in the 6Ks besides our guy that we talked about at 6,600. But Tyler Duncan was one I was thinking about here.
He definitely makes sense. I don't know if he's been hurt or what. He's been pretty bad for a while. If you want one that's off the wall down there, who we've seen here before, Kelly Craft. Oh, people don't even know that he just made the last 2 cuts at Travelers and Rocket Mortgage, and was top 40 at both. I don't know how. I haven't heard his name in it feels like a couple of years, but yeah, T38 at Travelers, T40 at the Rocket Mortgage, has a top 5 here at the John Deere before. Just a really good iron player, pretty good putter. He just doesn't really do anything else well, but he's going to be 0.8% owned, so go ahead and play some Kelly Craft.
Yeah, he will not be owned. And surprising, you talk about that top 5. That's back in the day. I'm seeing 24th here last year.
Yeah, this is probably 2016. So
yeah, so I mean, like that's even extra added bonus on top because who cares? We're years later. But even last year, 24th, and now coming in off those 2 top 40s, where again at courses like this, that can sometimes be deceiving in the other way too, where it's like, oh, it's only a 40, that won't kill me. But if they scored well, that was the thing going back to Crazy Carl, 2 eagles this past weekend. So even though he fell off on Sunday and did not have a great scoring round, his scoring had already been done for the week during round 3, round 2, where he had those eagles. So you got to keep an eye on that as well. Don't hate that Kelly Craft call there at the bottom. Nobody else for me
No.
down here. Is there anybody else you want to mention at all that we forgot throughout the whole thing?
No. Well, I guess one person would be Trey Mullinax. Hasn't been good at all, but we saw what he did last summer. You know, when he's playing well, he is way better than all of these other guys down here. So just the kind of guy who could probably find something.
Yeah, and I had him marked and then didn't bring him up with you, but I just was looking to go back because what I marked him for originally, I think he was 6,400, was to see he did end up missing the cut last week, right? I think he had a chance, and then what happened to him here? Round 1, he went 5 under, and then 2 over round 2 just to miss the cut. So yeah, that's something that's interesting as well. And Big Easy 952, our listener league winner this week. Eat your heart out, baby. You can go right back to these 6K guys. You get Mullinax, you get Kelly Craft, you get all these guys. You play your 2 up top with Denny and Henley. And then even though everyone says those are bad plays because they're over-owned up at the top, you've got no worries when you're playing Kelly Craft and Trey Mullinax with them down at the bottom. So
right.
I think that's good. I was going to try and come up. I know the Twitter conversation, I keep getting into it. I don't want to go all the way in, but if you were starting a thread, how would this sound, Baroff? Baroff's building blocks. And we start that up and you put your building blocks for the week, your 3 favorite plays. We got no cash game cornerstones this week. So don't like the thread idea, and you don't and probably will never buy Twitter Blue. What about if you were starting that thread? Who would you start it with, hypothetically, this week? And you could play off Kenny's cash game cornerstones. Who are the 3 guys you would start your lineups with for this week?
Yeah, I could just give you chalk, but all right. So I'll just give you one from each range. So you can do with these whatever you want. Sure. But for me, if I am paying up, I'm paying up for Denny McCarthy. There's no doubt about that. I would say Grillo is going to be number 2 for me. I think he's the best player in the 9Ks right now. I think he's in the best form of the 9Ks right now, and I don't think he's going to be popular. And then the last guy is Ches. I'm having trouble building any teams that don't have Ches Reavie in it.
We're all in on this guy, man, and it's going to be the letdown week, and then he's going to come back at the CUDA and get the job done for us. I think he'd show. You and I were looking that up on Twitter like last week or the week before, but I think he did commit to it. Correct?
Well, yeah, but we got to bet him this week for insurance, because if he wins here, he doesn't play the CUDA. He's going to the Scottish Open and the Open Championship. So you need the insurance money here.
I got it. So let's do that. Let's talk about some bets. I'll go first just because, you don't have to come up with a million of them. I know you post your card. You can give your Twitter where people can follow you to find all that stuff. And I'll hit you up on those women's bets as well at Pebble this week. And I think you also bet the Himmerland, the main over there. So for me, I bet a bad number on, well, it's not a bad number. You just called it a bad number. So we'll say it is, but Jaeger 40, can't leave that alone. Mind you, my card is done because I still had to include him in the each ways. For your point, he doesn't win. Like, it just doesn't happen. So Jaeger 40, Reavie 80, Nick Hardy 80, Neesmith 90. He's like a gut feel play. Taryn 100. And then the one other I had was Ramey at 125, but I think I should have bet Davis Thompson. Same number. I was looking between the two. We'll have to see. I don't think I got any more room though. So we'll see what that looks like. What do you got for yourself this week? Talk to people and where they can find you on Twitter as well.
Yeah, I kept it pretty light this week because I did bet Denny McCarthy at 16-1. And then each way on Eric Cole, Ches Reavie, and Callum Tarrant. That's it.
No Shank?
Did not do Shank, did not do Jaeger, did not do Smalley. So yeah, Godspeed to them.
And your week has been very close lately. You've been having some agonizing weeks, sweating these Corn Ferry Tour bets and Euro stuff over DP World Tour. All these ones where your guys you're in on early, and then you don't stick with them. They come back to haunt you a little bit sometimes. So maybe this is the week you can get the job done. What do you got for the women's this week? You talked about the bets over there. What are you doing with that one?
Yeah, so there's just some players who continually pop up in majors, and I'm just going to keep riding them. So obviously Jin Young Ko, world number 1, she's still 14-1. Like, you think about it, and like, she's played really well. She's won at least once, maybe twice this year. But you think about like the men's game. When are the top guys 14-1? Pretty much never. So I took her at the top. And then my favorite bet is probably Yuka Sasso. She is 50-1. She is the girl that Sky and Axis and those guys hit at the US Open a couple years ago. She was like 150-1, 140-1 then. And she she's like the Brooks Koepka. She just shows up in majors. She loves that style of golf. She was one stroke away from the playoff a couple weeks ago. And the person who beat her, Ruyang Yin, is my third bet at 33-1. She's now won twice in her last handful of starts, including the major 2 weeks ago, and now she's still 33-1. Yeah, sign me up for that with some places.
This is the best part. Like, I can just bet this card and feel pretty good about the week. I got a little bit of sweat equity.
It's just three women. Yeah, it's pretty good. We already talked about Himmerlin. I did, by the way, end up betting John Axelson, so you should probably do it.
Yeah, John Axelson, what was he, 100? He's probably down from that now, but
yeah, I got 125, I think. But yeah, with places, you need places for these guys, man. They're all pathetic. Absolutely pathetic.
Guido last week, you have the places, you think you're at least good for those, and then
my dude was like, what, +7 after 10 holes, 9 holes? That was special.
Tough scene, very hard to do seemingly, but we were cheering him on Saturday night. We were feeling pretty good. But what's funny here, like like you mentioned, 14-1, but if someone was just listening to this and said, okay, I'm only going to bet one of them, I like what Baroff said about that bet, I'm just going to hammer it at 14-1 or whatever hammer is, like at $10, $100, whatever they're betting for their bankroll. So I'm just going to hit that bet. They're fine with it. But on weeks when it's like Scotty 10-1 or something like that, everyone's like, absolutely not. There's no way. I know he's the best, but anything could happen, and they just don't do that. But on something like this where you don't know and you just want to sweat, people just hammer down, no problem, 14-1.
And it's also, it's a much more polarized tour. Like there are like 10 to 15 women probably who can win each week. You get the occasional outsider, but like if you bet one or two of those favorites, like you're going to have a sweat at some point on Saturday and Sunday. You just are.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. The Sasso call 50, not the 150 back then, but 50 still good. I don't have anything else. Did you have any thoughts on one and done? That was what I wanted to round it out on. There's 7 events left.
Yeah.
I used Ricky last week. I got into, I think I'm in 325th place.
Yep.
I have access to Denny, Henley, Cole. Of course, seemingly everybody does.
Maybe every shitty player. Yeah. But if you're not at the bottom, like trying to make a huge run, I would not overthink it this week. I would take Denny or Henley. If you want to take Eric Cole, you can, but he's going to be just as popular as them, I imagine.
Yeah. That's funny
like you guys,
I had Denny, Henley, and then I had a space, a gap, and I had Cole ? And I think you nailed it. That's how I would think of it. If you were down the board, Mayo and I decided on Cam Young. We're in like 1500th place. So we were like, let's waste him. No one's using him this week. It's probably a waste anyway, but really we got to try and play catch up here. You got to think he is talented. It's just, he has not shown it lately to what we want to see. So anybody else from down the board that you could think of that just nobody would be on?
No, I mean, I don't know how the ownership shakes out in that, but like, do people play a guy like Ches Reavie in a one and done?
Probably not.
Probably not. So like, if you have guys that you bet that you feel really good about, like, I have no issue with that. I remember, I guess it was a couple of years ago when we all hit Cam Champ at like 150-1 at the 3M. I used him that week in one and done because I was way behind, had a lot of conviction on it, happened to work out really well. But like, yeah, why not? All these guys are about the same, honestly.
Yeah. I definitely think that's a good call. These types of events, you just talk about how on the women's side, it's usually the same people winning, the pool being very small. This event for winners could be anybody, right? We have no idea. So if you've got conviction and you're behind in the one and done, I think that's a great strategy. If you're there and in the mix and you have these guys, I don't know what else you'd be saving them for. So why not just hop in and get the job done with those guys? So Denny, Henley, some of the others up there, if you like Shank, Hadwin, whatever you decide, those are the guys that you could go with. But Denny, Henley, seemingly a tier above. All right, Baroff, I appreciate you as always, man. Before we get out of here, let the people know where they can find you. And if you don't have Twitter Blue, what happens if you're off Twitter? Where do they go?
I was going to say, you probably can't find me. When everything went down a couple of days ago, I was like, I don't even need to tweet because nobody can probably see it. So it was great. But yeah, rbaroff427 on Twitter. We've been doing the Wednesday night spaces. I don't know if we'll do one this week while he was out of town. The event sucks ass, so probably no spaces, but hopefully I'll be able to at least read some tweets.
Yeah, and Saul doesn't want to give away his picks. Shout out Saul Goodman, my buddy, my
friend.
3
for 3, I know.
3 for 3 in the fantasy golf world.
He didn't share a single pick with us, by the way, in our group chat. He didn't even tell me that he had 3 teams doing well over the weekend. So yeah,
he's keeping it tight to the vest.
Going to silence right now.
Yeah, this is good. He really wants to get to that 3M Open live.
Sauce not going anywhere. Yeah.
I don't think so either. All right, cool. Right on, man. I appreciate it as always. You guys know where to find me on Twitter at Totag and Tambo. I have the tidbits up there as always Wednesday morning, somewhere in that 9 a.m. Eastern time zone. We'll get you guys set up so you can get those out there. Help me out, retweet it, quote tweet it, comment, whatever it is that you can do. It's free to do. It does help support me in that sense. And then, of course, shipitnation.com. Check that out. Myself and Hoop will be back on the Ship It Nation YouTube channel on Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern. It's a free show, breaking it down a little bit further once we have more on ownership, exposures, things like that. The site has everything you need to have success with DFS. That's going to do it for this week, though, guys. For Baroff, for myself, Totag, and Tambo, let's win some motherfucking money. Degen Nation.
I've been getting dirty money, Jordan Belfort, stacking pennies.